Welcome to Musical Insights. I'm Harry Bulow, and today we are talking with Joe Allison. Joe Allison is a professor of music and research and outreach at Eastern Kentucky University, and he has been a longtime director of bands here at Eastern, and he's been a tremendous force for new music for a lot of composers. The works that I had done with Joe were frankly some of the best recordings I ever received, and we thought we'd pick his brain a little bit today and find out some of the insights that he has about directing bands and new music and all of those things. So Joe, welcome.
Thank you
Great
so
to
much,
see you.
Harry. I'll have to admit, though, I can't live up to the quality of that introduction, but I'm happy to share whatever I have.
Well, you have a lot of good ideas and thoughts, and you've been very successful as a band director and music educator in all those areas. Can you tell us a little bit about the Marching Roundtable?
Well, it's a pet project. A business partner or two, Tim Hinton and Mary White, and I started this project about 3 years ago now, and it started as an educational podcast series, largely, as the name would suggest, for people in the marching activity. As a person who teaches in a music education program here at the university, we found that there's not enough instruction really to get students prepared to go out and work with particularly competitive high school marching band programs. It's sort of an activity unto itself. And so we started this as sort of an outreach type of thing. And it's taken on a life of its own, actually. We're slightly over 300 podcasts in the series.
Wow.
We've had great participation from iconic members of this community, and it's sort of branched out into other things, but it's really I think helped the community a good bit, and we have an excellent viewership, and so it's an ongoing project for sure. It really has taken on a life of its own.
That sounds exciting.
We're very proud of it.
Yeah, well, I wish you well and continued success with that.
Well, we want that activity to be every bit as musically valid as anything else we do. And of course, as you well know, the heritage of the band itself was the military band and parades and the outdoor functions and whatnot.
Sure.
And frankly, in higher ed, that's sort of been pushed aside to a certain degree, and its legitimacy has been questioned. But so we're attempting to drag it screaming, I should say, and kicking into the 21st century.
That's great. That's great. Maybe you could kind of give us an idea of your philosophical background. You've been doing a lot more research in arts in general. You came to Purdue and did a special program for us on the value of the arts, and maybe some of your philosophical ideas about education and the arts and how band and music fits in with all that.
How long you got?
Well, let's see.
One of my big crusades at this point is that I'm worried, and this sort of goes along with what I mentioned earlier about pushing the outdoor pageantry activity aside from the music ed curriculum, is that we might be sort of isolating ourselves in the academic ivory tower in some way from what's going on in our communities. And so it's really been an effort to try to update curriculum, to try to give students, particularly our ed students, an experience that will, I mean, I know it's not vocational school, but by the same token, we do a lot of specialized instruction, and I think an undergrad student has a right to expect a certain amount of preparation before they enter the workplace. And so a lot of this is just simply stemmed from a focus on what we loosely call reality.
Yeah.
And the same could be said in terms of literature, of certainly where you come into play, and some of the more contemporary works from you and others that we've explored really do. I mean, it's not that we don't have respect for the canon of our literature, and we expect our students to be well-grounded in the basic literature of the medium. But by the same token, there's so much new and wonderful music being written that applies to the here and now. And of course, 21-year-old students really tend to be able to relate to that sort of thing and identify with it more. And I just think I think maybe historians 50 years from now, I should say, will think that this is one of the golden ages of wind band composition.
Probably, yeah.
There's so much wonderful stuff, and we've certainly been thrilled to have a chance to be involved in your process and to explore your works. And I'm very proud to be associated with that.
That's great. Do you have any, when you think about, because you're still conducting and doing clinics and very active, when you think about putting together concerts, is that changed over the last few years, or is there some, how do you approach thinking through that?
Yeah, that's another subject that I've been doing this for almost 40 years and I've not figured it out yet. There are so many aspects to consider when you're programming for any ensemble, but at the university level, to be very blunt about it, my first priority is to program for the students,
Okay.
for their curriculum, to experience certain, again, iconic works, but to experience the new things that are coming out in the literature, and that's a challenge. But it's one that I look forward to, and of course we need to be more aware of programming for our audiences. And again, it goes back to the concept that, was it Leonard Bernstein that said that the orchestra hall was a musical museum?
Yeah.
And there's a certain amount of that. The relevance of what we do in the art music world to a general audience now has certainly come into question. So I hate to keep using that word relevance. You can tell I was a college student in the 70s, can't you? But nevertheless, to try to bring the medium to the audience, because, well, that should be obvious why that needs to happen. I mean, if it's going to be a reflection of who we are in our culture and our values, then we have to be there. So it's odd. I've done lectures and clinics and papers on the subject, and I'm more confused now than when I started, because it's a moving target.
I hardly think you're more confused. The lecture you gave up at Purdue was very stimulating. It was a lot of great feedback. People very excited about the arts, and we don't hear that much about, someone like you coming and really having a handle on the current research on what is happening and the value of the arts. And I think that was a tremendous opportunity for us, and we enjoyed it thoroughly.
Well, I certainly enjoyed it, and people were very receptive, and it just, every once in a while I think we have to stop and sort of cheerlead for ourselves.
Oh, sure.
And there's this, and you're very aware of this in your position, but sometimes we get very isolated and myopic in art music or popular music, or even the different types of visual art, sculpture, painting, etc. And we don't think as a community. And of course, when I was a younger educator, I just really couldn't be bothered with that because I was too busy trying to figure out where my niche was. But now I really do see the value in that for any number of different reasons. So it's been a real joy for me to be a part of a larger community. And I'm really interested in integrated arts, interdisciplinary arts, and so that's sort of been an outgrowth of all that. And
now, when you say integrated arts, does that mean the visual arts and sound arts and
everything
theater
together, and basically from a cultural, historical perspective. Why did Hindemith write what he wrote the way he wrote it? Why did Harry Bulow write what he wrote the way he wrote it?
Well, there's some questions about that.
Oh no, I think there's a lot of validity in what you do, and I feel like I had a little bit more of an insight into you at the core because of working on some of these pieces.
Well, I
so
appreciate
it's been
that.
really rewarding.
Do you happen to see it when you made a lot of CDs in your time, and still making CDs, and in fact, going to make another CD very soon. Do you have a particular thing that you think through when you design a CD at all? I mean, do you have is it the repertoire that's most recent? Is there, for example, when I was putting together one of my CDs, I felt like, if someone's going to listen to that CD from beginning to end, maybe it ought to be something like a concert or something where there's Do you have any thoughts on how you think through your CD productions?
Well, I do, but the boring answer is that principally the repertory comes chronologically from, normally it's 2 semesters per recording or an academic year.
Sure.
But given that, the process of choosing, obviously we don't put all the material we do during an academic year on the recording. So choosing what we think is the most significant, and again, one of the primary reasons for this recording project is to give examples to public school directors and students, high schools, middle schools, etc. So we tend to try to program for that literature that will be more valid to them. Not necessarily always the things that they play,
Sure.
because that wouldn't be practical for our own students to experience their repertoire. But there have been some things that might be a little bit more farther out or esoteric
Okay.
or whatnot that we may have in a particular recording chosen not to use simply because you don't want some really interesting aleatoric 21st century piece might be a little less valid for most of our listeners than one of the whole suites, for
That's right.
example. So, it's like your children choosing which ones you love the best. So
Yeah, well.
I've fought with myself. We even thought about putting out a double release one year, but it's a hard thing to do.
Yeah, that is.
And anyone that's ever programmed for this sort of thing knows exactly what I'm talking about. But there certainly is a thought process in terms of how chronologically how the recording is programmed and pacing development from a more holistic standpoint. And again, that's one of the things that, going back to the marching roundtable thing, that we talk about a lot is design and programming of literature and the arrangements of literature, so that you really do sort of consider the dramatic arc of a concert or a program. I mean, it's exactly the same in wind ensemble of a symphony.
Well, we thank you so much for all of the insights and thoughtfulness you have this morning. We really appreciate all of the work you're doing. And
Thank you for what
good
you
luck,
do.
and thanks so much for joining us for Musical Insights.
Totally my pleasure.